Here's a paradox only America could pull off. People are working more, earning more on paper, and yet somehow falling further behind. You get a raise, your rent goes up. You pick up a second job, your landlord raises the lease. It's like running on a treadmill that speeds up every time you catch your breath. Across the country, rent has exploded, doubling or even tripling in cities where wages have barely moved. The result? Millions of Americans are spending half their income just to keep a roof over their heads. And for many, that roof isn't even stable. It's temporary, fragile, rented. But this isn't just a story about supply and demand. It's about a system where housing isn't treated as a human need, but as an investment strategy. In the U.S., homes aren't built for people, they're built for profit. Investors, corporations, and hedge funds now own millions of properties, turning neighborhoods into revenue streams. Meanwhile, wages haven't kept pace. The average worker's income has crawled while the cost of living, led by housing, sprinted. And the American dream of owning a home has quietly turned into something else: being allowed to rent one. So today we're breaking down the real reasons rent keeps rising faster than paychecks, and why it's not just economics, but policy, politics, and power. Because in a country that tells you to work hard and get ahead, it's fair to ask, what's the point of getting ahead if you can't afford to stay where you are? There was a time when buying a home was about shelter, family, and stability. You worked, you saved, you bought a modest house, and that was it. A home was a place to live, not a financial strategy. But somewhere between Wall Street and Airbnb, that changed. Today, housing isn't about living. It's about leveraging. Real estate became an asset class, a playground for investors, corporations, and private equity firms. And when homes turn into investment vehicles, rent stops being just rent. It becomes profit. The shift started slowly. After the 2008 housing crash, millions of homes were foreclosed and sold in bulk, not to families, but to institutional investors. They turned houses into rental properties and neighborhoods into portfolios. Companies like Blackstone and Invitation Homes quietly became some of the largest landlords in the country. Their model is simple: buy cheap, rent high, automate everything. No local landlord, no personal connection, just data, metrics, and profit margins. When demand spikes, rents rise automatically. It's efficient, impersonal, and deeply unequal. And it's not just houses. Apartments are now owned by real estate trusts, REITs, that trade on the stock market. Your rent isn't going to a person. It's fueling dividends for shareholders. The more you pay, the higher their return. This financialization of housing changed everything. Homes stopped being built to meet demand. They're built to maximize revenue. Luxury apartments rise faster than affordable ones because high-rent tenants are more valuable than working families. The result? Scarcity by design. So when you wonder why your rent keeps going up, the answer isn't just inflation. It's because your home is no longer part of your community. It's part of someone's investment portfolio. And while housing turned into a business, wages stayed stuck in a different decade, setting the stage for a crisis that millions can't escape. It's easy to blame high rent on greedy landlords or booming cities, but the truth goes deeper. Wages simply haven't kept up. For decades, the American worker's productivity has skyrocketed, but their paycheck barely moved. Adjusted for inflation, the average worker today earns about the same as they did in the 1970s, even though the cost of living has doubled, tripled, and in some places exploded. Meanwhile, rent has surged. In many cities, it's up more than 30% just since 2020. That means even people who are working full-time, even people with degrees, can't afford stable housing. Teachers, nurses, service workers, and the people who keep cities running are being priced out of the very places they serve. And here's the cruelest twist. The harder you work, the less secure you feel. Every raise gets swallowed by rent hikes, groceries, gas, and insurance. You're technically earning more, but you're living the same. Or worse. This didn't happen by accident. It's the result of decades of policy choices. Unions weakened, labor protections eroded, and minimum wages stagnated while executive pay soared. Corporations focused on profits, not people, outsourcing jobs, automating labor, and suppressing wages. But here's where it all ties together. Stagnant wages make people desperate for affordable housing, which drives up demand for rentals. And when demand rises, landlords and investors take advantage. It's a feedback loop. One class works harder and gets poorer, while another collects rent and gets richer. In America today, rent isn't just a bill, it's a tax on not owning property. And for most people, that ownership is slipping further out of reach. But the real fuel behind rising rent isn't just low wages, it's scarcity. Because America's housing supply is broken on purpose. Here's the strange part. America has plenty of land. Cities have space to grow, technology to build faster, and materials to construct more efficiently than ever before. So why, in the middle of all that abundance, does the country still have a housing shortage? Because the system isn't designed to build for need, it's designed to build for profit. Over the past few decades, housing construction slowed dramatically, especially for affordable homes. Developers focus on luxury apartments and high-end condos because those bring bigger returns. There's no financial incentive to build modest, middle-income housing. The margins are too small. Zoning laws make it worse. Many cities still follow outdated rules that restrict multifamily buildings or require large minimum lot sizes. That means even when land is available, you can't build densely enough to make housing affordable. The result? Artificial scarcity, not a lack of space, but a lack of permission. Then there's the political side. Homeowners, especially in wealthy areas, often fight new development. They use zoning boards and neighborhood councils to block apartments, citing traffic, parking, or neighborhood character. The real motive? Protecting property values. Every new building feels like a threat to their investment, so they keep housing supply low to keep prices high. And the irony is brutal. The U.S. built millions of homes after World War II, creating stable, affordable neighborhoods. But now, the very success of that system has made it untouchable. The laws that once protected homeowners now trap renters in scarcity. So while wages stagnate and populations grow, the supply of affordable housing barely moves. And when supply can't meet demand, the only direction rent can go is up. But the real pressure doesn't just come from builders and zoning laws. It comes from a new player that treats housing like the stock market: corporate landlords. For most of American history, landlords were local. You knew them by name, saw them at the grocery store, maybe even lived in the same neighborhood. But that era is gone. Now, your landlord might be a spreadsheet. After the 2008 financial crisis, Wall Street found a new goldmine: housing. Millions of homes were foreclosed, and big investment firms bought them in bulk for pennies on the dollar. Companies like Blackstone, Invitation Homes, and Progress Residential quietly built empires, turning family homes into rental properties and neighborhoods into profit centers. Their strategy is simple: buy low, rent high, automate everything. No small repairs, no personal connection, just algorithms adjusting prices based on market trends. If rent demand rises, the software hikes it instantly. No human conversation, just data deciding your cost of living. This new kind of landlord doesn't care about communities. It cares about returns. Homes aren't homes anymore, they're assets in a portfolio. The more people are desperate to rent, the more valuable those assets become. So these corporations actually benefit from housing shortages. Scarcity is good business, and they're expanding fast. Corporate investors now own millions of single-family homes across the U.S., especially in cities like Atlanta, Phoenix, and Tampa. They outbid first-time buyers, driving up prices and pushing regular families out of homeownership entirely. Then those same families become their tenants, paying rent on the homes they couldn't afford to buy. It's a perfect trap. The working class funds Wall Street's profits one rent check at a time. But the danger isn't just economic, it's social. When the people who live in a community don't own any part of it, the fabric that holds neighborhoods together starts to unravel. And that's what's quietly happening across America. As renting becomes the new normal, ownership fades into the past. For decades, owning a home was the ultimate American dream. It meant stability, pride, and belonging. A symbol that you'd made it. But for millions of Americans today, that dream isn't just delayed, it's disappearing. The math simply doesn't work anymore. The median home price has skyrocketed far faster than wages. In 1980, the average home cost about 3 times a typical household's annual income. Today, it's more than 8 times. That means even people with decent jobs, good credit, and steady income can't afford to buy. And it's not just the price tag, it's the system. Down payments are higher, mortgage rates are rising, and competition is brutal. Corporate buyers can pay in cash, while ordinary families are left begging banks for approval. Even when they qualify, lenders now scrutinize everything: debt ratios, credit scores, savings history, making ownership a privilege, not a pathway. Then there's student debt. Entire generations entered adulthood already in the red. They can't save for a down payment because they're still paying for their education. And while they rent keeps rising, making saving even harder. It's a loop with no exit. The result? A growing class of permanent renters. Millions who will spend their lives paying for homes they'll never own. And the emotional toll is real. Renting means uncertainty. Leases end, rents go up, neighborhoods change, and you're always one notice away from being uprooted. Meanwhile, homeownership has become the new wealth divide. Homeowners gain equity and stability, renters lose both. The gap between the two widens every year, and so does inequality. So when Americans say they can't get ahead, they're not exaggerating. The ladder's still there, it's just been pulled higher. But this crisis isn't just about numbers, it's about power. Because behind rising rent is a political system that quietly protects those who profit from it. If rent keeps rising, shouldn't someone in power step in? You'd think so. But in America, the housing crisis isn't just ignored, it's protected. Here's why. High rent benefits too many powerful players. Real estate developers, banks, corporate landlords, and even local governments all profit when housing prices go up. Politicians talk about affordable housing every election cycle, but behind the scenes, their donors often depend on the opposite. Cities collect property taxes. The higher the rent and property values, the more they earn. Banks profit from bigger mortgages and longer loans. Developers lobby to keep zoning laws complicated because that limits competition. And landlords fight rent control policies like their lives depend on it, because financially they do. Rent control, where it exists, is often watered down or blocked altogether. In states like Texas and Arizona, it's outright banned. In others, loopholes let landlords raise rents anyway through fees, renovations, or market adjustments. Even tenant protections like eviction moratoriums were temporary and controversial. Then there's the federal government. Housing subsidies mostly go to homeowners through mortgage tax deductions, not renters. Public housing funds are undercut, and affordable housing programs are tangled in bureaucracy. So while renters struggle, the system quietly rewards those who already own. And the lobbying power of real estate is massive. The National Association of Realtors spends millions each year influencing legislation, ensuring housing stays lucrative. The result is predictable. Endless talk about housing affordability with almost no structural change. Because the truth is simple, America doesn't have a housing shortage, it has a priorities problem. And when profit decides policy, people stop being citizens and start being customers, trapped in a market they can't escape. But even with all this chaos, the real question remains, what does this housing crisis say about the future of the American dream itself? For generations, the American dream was simple. Get a job, buy a home, build a life. But that dream is quietly dying and being replaced with something far bleaker. Today, millions of Americans aren't chasing ownership anymore. They're trying to survive rent. Entire generations have accepted that they may never own property. Millennials and Gen Z aren't lazy or careless. They're locked out. The goalposts moved, and now making it means just staying housed. The new reality, renting forever. Not because people want to, but because they have no alternative. Home prices rise faster than wages, corporate investors dominate the market, and governments treat housing like a financial product instead of a human right. The result is a permanent renter class. People who work full-time, pay taxes, and still can't afford stability. And culturally, that shift is reshaping America itself. Renting used to be a temporary stage, now it's a lifestyle. Leases replace mortgages. Apartments replace neighborhoods. People move every year chasing affordability, never putting down roots. Community becomes fluid, friendships become fleeting, and the idea of home turns into whatever fits inside a moving box. This isn't just an economic change, it's emotional. Homeownership once symbolized control. Renting symbolizes uncertainty. When you don't know where you'll live next year, planning your future starts to feel pointless. And yet, for all the struggle, people keep going. Finding ways to make rented spaces feel like their own, building lives in a system stacked against them. But here's the question. How long can a society function when the majority can't afford the basics of stability? Because when a country makes housing unaffordable, it's not just pricing people out of homes. It's pricing them out of hope. Rising rent isn't just a housing issue. It's a mirror reflecting how the American system really works. It rewards ownership, punishes survival, and calls it the free market. The story always sounds the same. Work hard, save up, and you'll make it. But for millions of Americans, that math doesn't add up anymore. You can't save when half your paycheck disappears into rent. You can't plan for the future when your landlord can raise the price whenever they want. And you can't build wealth when you're too busy paying for someone else's. The truth is, America's housing crisis isn't about personal responsibility. It's about policy, power, and priorities. Homes stopped being homes the moment they became investments. Communities turned into commodities, and people turned into revenue streams. Every generation since World War II had a shot at the American dream. Today, that dream feels like a subscription. Monthly payments, automatic renewals, no ownership, no escape. But here's the thing, cracks are forming. More people are talking about housing reform, rent control, and community land trusts. Tenants are organizing. Cities are rethinking zoning laws. Slowly, painfully, people are realizing that housing shouldn't be an asset class. Like, it should be a right. Because a society where millions can't afford to live where they work isn't sustainable. It's broken. And unless that changes, the American dream won't just fade away. It'll be rented out, one lease at a time. So the next time someone says, if you work hard, you'll get ahead, maybe ask them, ahead of what?